Welcome back, everyone. Brad and Greta with Parenting with the Zudes podcast, #1 best-selling parenting authors, baby sleep consultants, toddler behavior. And we got a really good podcast today. If you're listening to this on iTunes, you can head over to our YouTube channel. Just type in the Zudes, and you can actually see the video of this. So our podcast is on YouTube. If you're on YouTube, you can subscribe to the podcast as well. If you're on YouTube, actually, what you need to do is drop a like, drop a subscribe, because that actually really helps us, and we really appreciate it. But today we got a really hot topic going on the podcast, and it's kind of the rage right now.
Yeah, I think so. It's a super hot topic. Everybody is making new decisions about homeschooling. Are they going to homeschool their kids? Families that have never considered that before, now with the all that's happening in our world, and
with the Rona, the 19, as we call it, because everyone knows that the only place that you can contract the pandemic is in a public school. And if you love your children, you certainly would not send them into the school.
Okay.
Just kidding.
Yeah. Anyhow, so we're going to talk about why we decided to homeschool, and
how we homeschool 8 children.
How we homeschool, and also, how to know, is this maybe the right decision for you? Could it work for you? So I hear all the time.
People are out there like, I tried it for a month and it was awful, and I can't wait for schools to open back up.
Right.
And it's probably, and sadly, it's probably because, not that they were doing it wrong, but they just they got thrown into it so suddenly that they didn't have time to plan and launch and really give it a fair shot.
Well, and pick something that was right for their family either.
Right.
Because most families got handed, you need to do this work from the schools.
Right.
And it wasn't I got to choose how to teach my child.
Well, and it's funny you say that, because that's probably the number one thing that I thought of because let's be honest, I thought homeschool was kind of weird. I graduated in a class of 400 seniors, not a big school, but definitely not a small school, and we had a couple homeschool kids that came in for sports and all this, and they were always a little different, and they always wore kind of different clothes, and I don't know, whatever. And so it was weird. And then I thought, when we're homeschool, I was like, okay, I have to perfectly recreate the public school experience at home, right? So I literally thought okay, we have to have a flag in the corner, and we're gonna say the Pledge of Allegiance every morning, and
Did you do that?
We gotta as a kid,
really?
You stood up and
we didn't do that in our
Pledge
school.
Allegiance and you sang a song.
We didn't do that in our school.
Yeah,
No, we didn't.
That explains a lot in our marriage right there.
Okay.
And so I thought that's what you had to do, and we had to go out and buy desks and
yeah,
pencil sharpeners, and I don't know.
Most of our school is done at the kitchen table.
It's not what I had in mind at all.
Yeah. So, should we briefly talk about how we decided to homeschool?
Yeah.
Okay. So, we were kind of challenged with this years ago when our daughter was 2, and some of our friends were...
Nothing like thinking about it plenty of time in advance.
And some of our friends were kind of making this decision, and we're like, I don't know. And I always had this vision of, having my 2 kids go off to school, only my 2 kids, go off to school, and I'm like, how am I going to spend all my days? It's just going to be lovely.
Should I go shopping? Should I go to the spa?
Yeah. I'm just going to have all this time to myself all the time. So I was really faced with my selfishness in that, and wanting to have my days to myself, and
and you didn't feel qualified. You're you're not a trained teacher.
Nope.
Huh. How could you ever think you could be?
Even teachers that we knew, they're like, well, we go to school for this for years, and what makes you think you can do it?
You don't fill cavities because you weren't a trained dentist, so what makes you think you can homeschool your children?
Right. So then, you start to doubt yourself. But
that makes so much sense.
Right. But it really came down to, who's really responsible for teaching our children? And we want to be the main input in our children's lives. I want to be the one pouring information into them, and they can get some misinformation when they're other places or with other people, and we want to be the main source of information.
Yeah, it's funny, and that's how, influencer parenting, right? That's kind of our toddler behavior program that we have, which you should check out. There's links in the description. It's called influencer parenting, right? And the thesis is the strongest influence in the life of your child wins. So the only question is this, is that you, right? And we wanted to control that narrative.
Right. So after a lot of thought and thinking about, our life, and it was kind of around the time where we were deciding, like, how are we going to have a big family or not? So lots of things were changing in our world, but we decided to jump on in and do the homeschooling thing. And when our daughter was 2.5, and even though we didn't start formal training, we're always teaching our kids. So from the time they are born, we are teaching them in what we do, how we live life, in what we're telling them. They're always learning. So
it's just a matter of, are you teaching them the correct thing? Are you teaching them what they want, what you want, or are you teaching them, do as I say, not as I do?
So fast forward, now we have really, I would say 6 of our children are actively having structured time with me to learn, anywhere from learning your numbers and working on processing skills all the way up to algebra,
Right. And I think what's funny, not to jump in, but I think a lot of people, they get intimidated, but, one of the things they don't understand is that, if you start young, there's a lot of years where it's just really easy, your colors, numbers, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, if you get into like high school kids or like your 8th graders, it can be a little more intimidating.
Sure.
If you're starting with a 7th grader.
Sure, definitely. So our days, normal school days will look like we start about 8:30 with some family time and reading scripture and maybe some other just general lessons. Maybe we'll do a history lesson, maybe we'll do a science lesson all together, and then we kind of split up, and about 45 minutes later we'll split up and everybody kind of has their own things that they do by themselves while we rotate time with me so that I can have personalized lessons with my kids.
So how much time total do you think you spend with the kids, and how much
you mean
time
individually or together?
Collectively, and then how much time do you spend with a 3rd grader and an 8th grader? So
I could spend, I would say, a 3rd, 4th grader, I would spend, depending on the day, a half an hour up to an hour. And typically I would say we land around 45 minutes. 3rd, 4th grader. And a little bit, it just depends too, but with our 6th grader, who's onto algebra, I probably spend 30-ish minutes with her. And the only thing I really do with her is math, because she is at that point where she's doing things on her own now.
Sure.
And all I have to do is kind of check in and see what she's learning and make sure she's progressing in her things. And so, the beauty of it is if you train them and if you teach them along the way, they become self-sufficient and they get to that point where they are sufficient learners on their own. So anyway, so that's a little bit about our day. Maybe 30 to 45 minutes, sometimes with the younger ones, 60 minutes.
But it's crazy what you can accomplish. What takes the public school system 8 hours during the day,
right,
really only takes an hour or two if you really want to get crazy.
Right, and they do things on their own too. But
and one thing with homeschooling is that I think you have to keep in mind that there's a difference between being the teacher and being the facilitator, right? So Greta is the teacher, but there's also things and people that we use to where Greta oversees. She's not maybe necessarily the direct input. So like an online class, that would count as part of homeschooling, where Greta would homeschool them through that, but she's not the teacher.
Right.
Per se.
Sure.
So it's like, if you're feeling like, hey, I'm really intimidated because I know nothing about science, well, now more than ever, like I even saw an article that a virtual babysitter is a thing.
Oh.
All these parents like on Zoom calls and stuff for work, like they need something to do with their kids that are home, and so like apparently you can be like they pull up another computer that's got another Zoom screen on it, and like there'll be a babysitter that will like play with your child, whatever that means, or watch them or like read them a book.
Because like I don't know about well, hopefully the 2-year-olds have a little bit more supervision.
Yeah.
But, than a virtual babysitter.
Yeah. So if you have older kids, there's so many resources to where they can do online classes and things at home. I mean, this isn't 1970 with
True, where you only have the resources of the books you buy.
a chalkboard and chalk and you're drawing diagrams of frogs' eyes and
we
labeling
have so many resources.
Whatever.
It's crazy.
Photosynthesis.
All right, so what I really want to spend some time on are some objections that people have that I've heard. How
much time do we have?
So it's
we got a couple more minutes.
It's kind of sad to me to hear some parents be like, I can't do it. It just doesn't work for our relationship. And I think that's probably the biggest thing, is this child-parent relationship and how children don't respect the parent enough to let them be the teacher. Mm-hmm. And so it really goes back to establishing your authority in the relationship.
Yeah.
And so before you can homeschool, if you haven't established that authority, your child will never listen to you. They will never learn from you.
It's not about that you can't translate photosynthesis to your child. It's about the structure of, hey, I need you to come over here and sit down and be quiet because we're doing this now. That's where the breakdown happens. Just the logistical, I'm mom, your dad, come over here, sit down, we're going to learn.
Right. And it doesn't have to be dry, and you don't have to be strict, and it doesn't have to be this unfun thing like sit down and you're going to listen to me and you're going to learn. I think homeschooling
it's a lifestyle.
It is a lifestyle.
Like a good diet. It's a lifestyle.
Yeah. But you have to establish that authority first.
Yep.
And your children have to understand what obedience is. Otherwise, they're just not going to listen to you. Mm-hmm. So if you are considering homeschooling, but you're like, I don't know if our relationship can handle that, well, spend the summer and establish that authority.
Work on that.
Yeah, work on requiring obedience from your child, and work on, if they don't do this, we're going to have consequences. It's really pretty simple. And they have to know that you're serious. They have to know that if mom says something, I need to do it. Just
like we would respect our teacher at school.
Right. They give the teacher at school tons of respect. Most children do, right? And they come home and you're like, how is it that they at school they tell me my child is this angel, and they come home and they're a terror? Well, it's because they respect the teacher. They know that the teacher has rules. They know that the teacher's serious. They know that there are consequences for disobeying that teacher, right?
And it's one of the benefits of having 8 children, because we have to operate in that mode like all the time, or else it's like battleships down. Like we have to be in control, like a lot more than just someone with one child, but still doable. So
right. So I that is probably the main objection that I have seen kind of going around social media, is that, it's not good for our relationship.
And so other things include like, oh, I don't want my child to be weird. What about socialization? What about team sports? Yes. And all that's just, I guess those were legitimate questions and concerns that we had.
Now,
so I shouldn't, it's easy for me to sit here and poo-poo them, which isn't fair, because I probably had some of those questions as well.
But when is the last time you sat in a room with 30 other, how old are you? 36-year-olds? Never. After you leave school, you will never be in that circumstance ever again. And
just all those people of the same age all sit in the room. People of the
same age all sit in the room.
Right.
And, you're exactly the same,
Right.
Yeah. So why do we think that is really
It's really
beneficial?
False socialization.
It is.
Because it is not representation of the real world.
Right, it's not the real world. And I think that it's so great to have the ability to, and you have to find opportunities for your kids, and you have to get out there and go do things. And
certainly need life experience and all.
Yeah, but
that's not hard. That's pretty easy to do.
It is fairly easy. I mean, if you're an outgoing person, if you're not an outgoing person, it can be challenging. But there are so many resources and so many classes, and maybe not now in particular, but there might be, as we get into the fall, more, I don't know, where you can have a little bit more control over your circumstances but still get out there and do stuff.
For us and our family, we're trying to pull them back. It's like we'll go to the store and they'll have like a 20-minute conversation with the cashier.
Yeah.
About, what color's your house? Do you have any kids? What's your cat's name? My cat's name's Sonic.
What's your mom and dad's name? How old are they? How old are you? Yeah. Our kids are really social.
But that's what church and other activities are for.
Yes.
So that's not really a concern.
That's not really a concern. Yeah. And
or it's easy to get over if you
it is
think
easy to get over.
it,
Yeah. And as far as, curriculums go, and this is not working for us, well, again, you've been handed, most parents have been handed, this is what the school does. And the beauty of homeschooling is that you get to decide what you teach, what level or what rate. You get to decide all of those things on your own and what works for you and your child. And the beauty is just so that, I can customize to you. I don't have to do what the 30 other kids your age are doing. And if that doesn't fit you, great, let's do something else. Let's find what works. So I think there is so much wonderful so many wonderful benefits in homeschooling. And I do want to throw in there that, today for me, we're only 12 days out of having a baby, but
my eyes just finally weren't crossed anymore. They finally just reopened.
But today, we're just getting back into a little bit of
You actually drove a powered vehicle last night for probably about the first time. That was good. You were
almost.
You were back in driving condition.
Yeah, between pandemic and having a baby, you just don't even go anywhere.
Yeah.
But today for me was just like one of those really beautiful days where there weren't any issues and everybody worked really hard, and it was just one of those we did it. It was the perfect day. And I've seen so many of these things on social media too, where parents are like, today was horrible, and then the next day, today was amazing. And I think the one thing to remember when you are entering into that homeschool mindset is that you will have those really wonderful, beautiful days where everything just goes perfectly, and you couldn't even ask for a better day. And then you think you have it figured out, and you do the exact same thing the next day, and it's like a
Did you forget?
big old flop.
What did you have for breakfast? What happened in the last 12 hours?
Yeah, and that is life. That is life. And I think that one of the best things for me has been that having my kids home and teaching them has been an extremely sanctifying experience. And everybody's like, oh, you must be so patient. You must be so patient. And the thing is I'm not. I'm actually a super angry person in my flesh. And I have learned to control that. I have learned to speak gently. I have had to learn to, be in that
mindset and understand what your temptations are and your
And there's no such thing as the perfect schedule or the perfect curriculum, and it's just a learning experience. It's a growing experience for you and your kids.
Constantly adapting is what you have to be okay with for sure.
Yes.
So we'll have to do a day in the life, more of a day in the life podcast of how you structure these things.
Oh, yeah.
That'd be a good one. That would be a good one. But again, if you're watching this on you, or if you're listening to this on the podcast, head on over to YouTube, type in Parenting with the Zudes on the channel. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Really means a lot to us. You can check out links in the description if you want to know more. And I think it's time for nap for you.
I think so too. I'm kind of in this I've been holding a baby so much. I'm kind of in the rocking
just rock.
phase.
Whether I have a baby or not.
I'm just always rocking. Kind of getting into the rocking.
You and your baby can't control your head. It's just like bobbleheads. That's funny. All right. We'll see you on the next one, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.